Hi, everyone. I am so honored to be here with you today. Oh, this silly earring. I'll leave it. Gosh, and just to see the faces behind all of the research and contributions and efforts that have me here standing with you today. I'll give you a funny story. I was in for an x-ray. I go for multiple x-rays and CTs, and I popped out of x-ray. It was a super quick x-ray of my chest. And the radiologist had popped out from behind, and he said, gosh, I've seen so many images of your insides, and I just wanted to see the person on the outside. And today, it's a bit like that for me to be here with you today. I get to see the faces behind the research that have me here, and I'm so eternally grateful for you. So thank you. Gosh, where to start? I have a really big series of slides, but, take it back. I, like many of you, have attended UBC. I graduated in exercise science. I lived a life passionate about health and wellness. I continued on to become a sports chiropractor and passionately served in that arena of inspiring others to attain their very best health status. I hiked every mountain, and I soared down them all on my skis. I was happily married. I was 35 years young, and I was the mom to two beautiful baby boys, and I still am today because of you. Living the dream, truly. We lived at the end of a cul-de-sac on the North Shore. Our home, huge home, was filled with family, friends, great food, and great music. And one day I was still nursing my youngest son. And I packed up the kids for this fun day. I did a quick lab first before we headed out for our day of fun. We were going off to the aquarium. And I did a quick routine lab before we left and arrived at the aquarium. Walking in the doors, my life changed. It was a day just like any other spring day in 2012. We had plans for the future. We had plans for the next week. We were due to be traveling to Kelowna for a month-long family vacation. My oldest was soon to be 5, and life was immediately interrupted. I had a phone call while I had 2 sets of little legs beaming ahead into the aquarium, so excited to see all of their aquarium friends. My babies were tiny at the time. One had just turned 2, and one was barely 4. I nearly didn't answer the call because, as most of you know, in the aquarium, the cell phone reception is really poor. But I answered the call, and without having even complained of feeling sick or unwell and always being focused on the care of everyone else around me, I stood there blindsided as the gentleman on the other end of the line communicated that I needed to avoid all public places and go straight away to the emergency room. It was soon established that I had a very rare and aggressive leukemia. I was hypoplastic, AML. I was admitted right away for full-time chemotherapy, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The life that I knew was brutally ripped away. I did not get to attend my son's 5th birthday party. We did not go on that trip. And the life that I knew then was really never to return. I did not, despite my most valiant of efforts at VGH, I did not respond to even the harshest of chemotherapy regimens known as salvage chemotherapy. I was awarded a 2-month terminal prognosis. I was denied all further treatment aside from palliative care. This was back in 2012. Sounds came out of me that I never even knew before existed. Just days before that, though, literally less than 24 hours before receiving this dire prognosis, the team had finally come in, racing into my room, saying, "Great news, Erica, great news. we have finally established this much-needed bone marrow transplant donor. I had been told that once I was in remission, I would need this bone marrow transplant to serve as the quote-unquote cure to prevent against relapse. And my only brother, who's a surgeon back east in Ontario, proved not to be my perfect match. And so this worldwide search had been hailed on my behalf to find a perfect donor. And miraculously, after weeks of waiting and weeks of trials, the team came racing in and said, well, we've got the perfect 10 out of 10 match. And this information, just knowing this, filled me with such hope that I would not only survive, but that I would truly, truly thrive. I was allowed out of the hospital that night on a 2-hour pass, and we attended this long since planned family wedding where my boys were the little ring bearers. I was sick as sick could be. I was bald as bald could be. I had borrowed a dress from a girlfriend who had just brought it over kind of last minute. And it was a huge celebration of life, of this gift of life that had just been extended, and this gift of hope. And yet, less than 24 hours later, this gift of hope was brutally ripped away when I heard I wasn't in remission and I was no longer eligible to receive this incredible gift of this donation. And so I fought to go home. If I had 2 months to live, I had a lot of living to do, and I wanted to spend every minute of it at home. I was denied all further medical care aside from palliative care, and I did not want to go to that palliative floor. And fueled on all of the hope from that donor, this complete stranger, who in fact rose to help from halfway around the world in my time of need. And I didn't know it then, but I've only come to learn his name after. And he's this incredible hero in my world who has the last name Hoppe, believe it or not, Hoppe. He's from Germany. He's this young mountaineering adventurer. And because of the hope, I think his last name is Hope. Because of all the hope that he had brought to me, I fueled my fight on that hope. And I pursued any and everything in the natural healthcare realm. My goal, to be honest, wasn't to get into remission. I was so sick. My goal was to find someone somewhere in the world to give me this transplant without being first in remission. There was a study going on in Montreal where these patients were receiving higher doses of radiation as part of the whole body radiation measures before a bone marrow transplant. And I was desperately trying to get out there or have UBC do this trial, put me in as part of the trial here. My goal was to stay healthy enough for one more day. And I did any and everything in the natural healthcare realm. I fueled my mind, my body, and my soul in a completely different way. I truly transformed from within and found such a joy in the gift of each and every moment. I prepared for the worst, and I accepted that this fire-breathing dragon of cancer may have this unfortunate outcome. I wrote all of those dire, heartfelt memory albums for my babies. You know, if they're in the future when they graduate from grade 7, all of these notes, I prepared all of that with tears streaming down my face. But at the same time, I also expected the best. And incredibly, I, through those efforts, achieved this beautiful, miraculous, what's called in the medical world as a spontaneous remission, full and complete remission. Only because of that was I then eligible to have this life-saving bone marrow transplant. And incredibly, my amazing donor in Germany, I have all these great photos of him I would have loved to show you, was still keen to help at that point. I was gifted this second chance because of all of the research that you do. And all along the way, I had blood transfusions every step of the way. Even as well as I am today, I still receive blood transfusions. Preventative immunoglobulins, I mean, you name it. I am a frequent flyer of Canadian Blood Services in every way. But my story did not end there. I grew strong, and I was back to hiking every mountain and soaring down them all on my skis. And then on my hikes, I started to not be able to talk in the same capacity. I just couldn't seem to catch enough air. And I mentioned it to my physicians, and they were like, Erica, you're so much more active than everyone else after transplant. And I was just so grateful, to be honest. Instead of hiking the Gross Grind, I would happily, very happily, walk the seawall. I was just so grateful to be alive and to get to be mom to my 2 boys. I didn't care if I was hiking those mountains at the time. But then this process of this shortness of breath that I had been noticing really still caught up with me, even on the flats. And it really progressed very, very quickly. My weight plummeted. I fell to 75 pounds. I was prescribed full-time oxygen. And it was soon realized that my new, very hardy immune system, from my new donor, my blood type had even changed from O negative to A positive, which I thought was a really great score on that test. But this strong, new, hardy immune system had kind of woken up and looked around and said, shoot, I don't recognize her lungs, and embarked on this fierce process of rejection through a process of graft versus host, and literally obliterated my lungs through a process called bronchiolitis obliterans. My only chance of survival was a double lung transplant, for which I had in 2015. And oddly, beautifully, I don't know what the perfect word is, but on the day that I received my worst news in 2012, July 31st, fast forward 3 years, that ended up being the day that I received the best news of lungs being awaiting me. On that day, I had my lung transplant on August 1st, 2015, and I was gifted the gift of breath through this incredible family who shared the most trying of trying times, shared the gift of life. And I'm here today with you because of that kindness and generosity bestowed to me. I grew strong, but with those lungs came another virus. I was admitted to hospital yet again. It's like the story of the rise and fall, this incredible emotional and physical roller coaster. I was admitted to hospital again, trying to fight this virus that's really of no sequela for the for the regular population, but for the immune-compromised population, it's of huge consequence. It's called CMV, cytomegalovirus. I unfortunately grew resistant to all forms of treatment available. I was called the Hail Mary of VGH all over again, receiving endless transfusions, receiving, endless life-saving measures. In the spring of 2017, I just started to grow my own immunoglobulins to this darn bug, for which is a feat of feats in itself, because since my bone marrow transplant, I no longer produce my own immunoglobulins. Hence, I still go in for these preventative transfusions now, where I borrow immunoglobulins from those who donate blood that keep me strong and keep me out in the public and being mom and doing all the things that I do. But I grew my own immunoglobulins to CMV at that time, and after being resistant to all forms of treatment. And I then grew strong. Then my husband chose to divorce 6 weeks after I was finally out of hospital. I faced a move. I faced adjusting to life as a single mom and somewhat recreating myself at that point. And in the background, you have always been there, researching and sharing your contributions. I feel like when I walk into VGH, I've won the Super Bowl every single time, from doctors and nurses and porters and lunch ladies, and I mean, you name it, the tech staff. Everyone knows me, and I walk in and they just all have such hearts. But for all of those behind the scenes, I've always known that you were there every step of the way. And I do things like today to pay forward in some small way, to give back to this amazing community who has ensured that I get to be here, that I get to be mom for my 2 beautiful boys. I now speak on stages all over the world. I speak on resilience and positive psychology. I coach others navigating through hard days. I have a podcast, which I love, called the Rise to the Inspirational Podcast. I am working with New York publishers to put out my book. And more importantly, I get to be mom. My kids are now 14 and 11, my boys. They're soon to be 12 and 15. I'm almost 10 years, I think. Total today would be 3,500 and close to 40 bonus days. I'm so incredibly gifted to get to be alive. And so I hope that today you're inspired when you go back to your work, that you do have a purpose and you are changing the world one person at a time. And I could not be more grateful, as with my boys as well. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. And if anyone has any questions, I'll happily address, but thank you for the opportunity.
Not a dry eye in the house, right? Okay, we're now